Hello, twisted humans.
Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting?
Then this is the podcast for you. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Sierra, and this is Twisted and Uncorked. We made it to 60 fucking episodes.
I know, that's so fun.
I don't know what kind of milestone this is, but it's one.
It feels like
I'll
a milestone.
say that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's over a year and like double digits and a new decade. Is that the right word?
I feel like the 60s are all the fun things. Like 60 feels fun. 66 is going to feel fun. 69?
Right, yep.
Nice.
We're going to make all the inappropriate jokes. And I just wanted to say thank you. I sent Sierra a text message today. Our listener downloads are just like,
they're going.
Like going. And every day I'm like, really? I don't know after a year why I should feel surprised, but I'm humbled is the word.
Yeah.
So, thank you
Thank
guys
you
so
to everyone
much.
who
Yeah.
is sharing with your friends. It's amazing.
Yes.
Keep doing it.
Yeah. And then while we're on that, don't forget to leave a review because you guys are quiet out there and we want to hear from you. So
Yeah.
leave those reviews, get that entry to get some free Patreon.
We want to hear you in all ways, especially in the way of stories. Today, last week we did a listener requested story.
It was so fun.
Today we're doing another listener requested story. Yeah. But first, do you have a fun fact, Alicia?
I do. And it's going to be horrifying to us short people. So I need you to just picture this. So the tallest man ever recorded was Robert Wadlow between 1918 and 1940. So he didn't even live in an optimal time to be that tall because people think everyone is witches and is horrible. He was 8 feet 11 inches.
Jesus Christ, that is almost 9 feet.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. And it was the result of an abnormally large pituitary gland. And this was shocking to me because my vice principal when I was in high school was 7 feet tall. And he was already like gigantic when I would walk through the hallway. And I'm like,
oh my goodness.
8 feet 11. I can't even picture that.
No, that's crazy.
Right? So, I mean, R.I.P. Robert. I hope you weren't ridiculed too much, but what?
I hate it. I hate it so much.
Like, that's like 3 feet taller than us.
Yeah, that's gross. No offense. I can't,
Sorry, that's more than 3 feet. That would make
me.
us 5'11".
Yeah.
We're 5'11", guys. Tell everyone, okay? Right? Crazy. Anyway,
that's scary.
Yeah, it was scary, but I was like, oh, what?
Goodness gracious. Well, I'm going back to Crazy Laws.
Yes.
This is from my legal lunacy book. This is an old law, but I'm not going to pronounce the name of the law because it's in French and I can't pronounce it. But under this old law, if you died while traveling in France, the government could take your luggage, your money, and anything else that you owned while there and keep it.
Oh, what?
Yeah, they don't send it back home to your family or nothing. It's like, oh, you're in our country and you died? Fine, I'm taking everything.
I was going to say, this is hitting a little bit close to home to the episode we released today.
Well, luckily, this law was abolished in 1819.
Oh, thank goodness. That's crazy. Like, F you. You can't take my stuff. Ugh.
Yeah, it's super weird.
Well, hopefully anybody that died between X time and X time in France got their stuff back.
I mean, how much stuff did you have before 1819 anyway?
Right?
I don't
I
know.
don't know. You had a whole chest because they didn't really have suitcases, right? So they had like chests.
Right.
Don't you keep your valuables in something like that? I don't know. What do I know? I am just living on like old-timey, like old school things because Sierra and I have decided that we are going to New Orleans for our 30th birthday in 2023. It's happening. Nobody gets to say otherwise. So I'm just picturing flapper girls and and all sorts of fun and old-timiness.
It's the best.
And Kevin's like, well, we're like, are you sure that they're okay with that? And I'm like, well, Sierra is, so Jesse's going to. And everywhere we stay is going to be haunted. Me and Kevin are still watching the originals, and that takes place in New Orleans, so that also adds to my fuel of just needing to be there. Also, the haunted case that I researched for next week is in New Orleans, so I'm just on a New Orleans trip. Yeah, hint, hint. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But that's not what we're talking about today. Sierra's got another wild case for us today.
I do, but first let's talk about this tasty treat.
How wildly tasty this sangria is.
Yeah, it is so delicious. Last week we had the Panetti Notte Pinot Grigio. It was super good. This week we made it into a sangria, which again kind of feels more like a cocktail. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but lately my sangrias feel like cocktails.
They're just extra simple, very few ingredients.
Yeah, not too
delightful.
Not too many fruits. Mm-hmm. But it's the wine with 3 muddled strawberries, some vodka, some agave nectar, and some lemon juice. I forgot to get a lemon, so I put lime juice in mine, but it's still
good.
Fucking delicious. Oh, and then topped off with a little bit of club soda as a spritzer.
Mm-hmm. And the mint was optional, but I definitely put mint in mine.
I did not put mint in there. I just didn't have any this time.
You know what's funny is I went to 2 different grocery stores to find mint today, so because I was determined. I was like, ooh, strawberries and mint, I'm in. But I don't have a muddler, guys, so I just aggressively stabbed at my drink with a spoon, and it's not very muddled. It looks like I put very sad strawberries in here. They're very fresh strawberries. They were really good. I had them with my lunch or my snack today, but I was like, ugh. I apologize in advance. It's not visually appealing, but it is really good.
Mine is. It's fine.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, Sierra's our bartender on the show, so she has multiple people ask to come and be their bartender, so. Especially on TikTok. Go check out those videos that she makes, because they're really good, and they always have fun and upbeat music that are stuck in my head for the rest of the day.
Last week, if you guys remember, not last week, 2 weeks ago, our last sangria, Alicia talked about how it was good, but not enough because it felt like winter and she wanted something summery. So this week I was like, I am going to understand the assignment.
She brought the summer, guys.
Yeah. And that is the reason for the song that you're going to hear on TikTok.
Oh, I look forward to that because this is really good.
If I can find it. I'm not good with TikTok, so.
You are so. What would you rate this drink?
I think I would rate this one a 9. I don't remember what I gave the wine, but this is definitely up there for me.
I'm gonna say a 9 too, because it's really fucking good.
It's really good.
And be careful when you're squeezing your citruses, everybody, because I got my lemon in my eye.
Did you see in the last sangria video when I was squeezing it, I had a cut on my hand and I squeezed it and it got right into my cut and my face, I was wincing. I was like, I'm recording. I can't stop.
It didn't show in the recording.
Yeah.
That's the beauty and the sacrifice that we put into the show, guys. We take all of the citrus juice.
Right into the open wounds.
Yeah. / eyeballs. Not good.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 would not recommend. But 10 out of 10 would recommend the sangria. So, I mean,
for sure.
Worth it.
Today I am covering an unsolved case that was requested by a listener. I'm super excited to cover this case. I even got some information from that listener about their theories on the answers. So we'll talk about that at the end.
But clearly hid this from me because I'm blind.
But first, we are going to take a listen to a promo from the Sheer Crime podcast. I actually may have helped them become a podcast, so that's super cool. Before they started their podcast, they messaged me. It was like, hey, what do I do? And I was like, I'll tell you everything. It's so much fun.
Aww,
so,
that's awesome.
Yeah, their podcast is super awesome. Listen to this promo. Okay, so as requested by a listener, today, I am covering the unsolved case of the Yuba County Five.
Oh, this case is so fucked up. I never understand it.
So before researching this case, I thought that I probably already knew everything about it because it's been covered so many times. And I've heard it all the time. I listen to every time it's covered. It's so interesting to me. I know everything about it. I was wrong. There is a lot of wrong information going around. It's not necessarily case-solving information anymore, but it probably was at the time that it happened. And now it's kind of just super insensitive that people are getting it wrong. I can't blame the other people who've covered the case, though, because the press is the ones who got it wrong in the very first place. And, the people who retell the story just go off the newspapers. They trusted the newspapers. They are wrong. Lucky for me, just last month, a deep dive podcast into this case came out, and it gave me interviews with the family to work with.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
I have heard from their families. Even if you think you've heard this story covered a million times, you haven't heard it like this.
Oh, that's awesome, because yes, you were right. And no matter how many times this case is told, everybody has a different take on it too, which is very interesting. So I'm super excited that Sierra is covering this.
Okay, so the 5 that this case refers to are 5 men named Bill Sterling, 29, Jackie Hewitt, 24, Ted Weir, 32, Jack Madruga, 30, and Gary Mathias, 25. These 5 men are often referred to as boys in the newspapers and also allegedly by people in the town. This is the first piece of wrong information that probably hindered the solving of the case. The parents called them the boys because they are their parents. Just like Jesse's mom has 2 kids. She calls him and his brother her boys because they're her kids. It would be weird for her to call them her men.
Yeah, that is
weird.
But
the press referred to them as boys because it made for a better story.
Oh, no.
5 missing men is scary, but 5 missing boys is sad and causes empathy. So it seems like a good thing at first glance because now people are paying attention. Yeah. But just wait, the reason that the press gave for these men being referred to as boys is their mental capacity. They were considered, in those days, quote-unquote, retarded. This is another huge misconception that later hinders the solving of the case. This case took place in 1978. In 1978, the 5 men were considered to have mental disabilities, and some people did call them, quote-unquote, retarded. If you're a patron, then you know from our most recent recap of old haunted mental facilities in the Trail to Terror documentary, that mental disabilities before the 90s consisted of everything from depression and anxiety to wanting a divorce to actual mental incapacities. These 5 men were no more, quote-unquote, retarded as any of us with what are now considered completely normal mental illnesses.
Oh, wow.
So let's start with Bill Sterling, for instance. Bill was hospitalized at the Napa Hospital when he was young for the quote-unquote mental disability known as hyperactivity.
Is that
that was his
ADHD?
mental... Yes.
Okay.
So when he was released as an adult, he was often taken advantage of by people at the bar who would get him drunk and then steal his money. He was a little naive and maybe immature, so his parents moved him into their house where they could make sure he didn't get into trouble. No more drinking, no more bars, and he became a regular old functioning adult who was actually very organized, religious, and loved books.
Oh, much like us. We love a good book.
He attended the Yuba City Vocational Rehabilitation Center for the Mentally Disabled, where they focused on helping quote-unquote retarded men get jobs, and that is where he met his best friend, Jack. Jack's mental disability was introvertness.
Sorry.
That's what...
Oh, well, just lock us away then.
Right? It was probably actually depression, though, because it came on right after he was drafted into the Vietnam War.
Oh,
Before that, he loved to hang out with his family all through his high school days. His nieces and nephews said that he was the most fun uncle. When he got drafted right after he graduated, he cried because he was so scared that he would be killed or maimed. He was lucky and he came back completely fine, except that he then started seeking medical help for his mental state. He knew something was different in his head.
Completely fine physically, but not so much mentally. That trauma is very real. Oh,
Right.
Poor guy.
Jack moved in with his parents because he was helping pay half of all of the bills, contrary to the popular belief that he and the other men weren't able to care for themselves. He could 100% care for himself.
I love the way that you're covering this already.
Ted, on the other hand, had a little more of a difficult time taking care of himself. By today's standards, he was probably on the autism spectrum. If he had lived in 2022, he would probably live just fine on his own. He was extremely smart. He loved sci-fi. He just didn't understand common sense quite as well as the next guy, and no one knew just how to teach it to him. Ted took things very literally and asked why a lot, but he was the sweetest man. He would wave to complete strangers and get really sad if they didn't wave back to him.
Oh, I would have waved to you, Ted.
Jackie, who was the youngest, was Ted's best friend and was also probably on the autism spectrum. Ted considered Jackie to be like his little brother, and Jackie looked up to Ted just the same.
Oh.
Jackie had many siblings, but they were all younger. He was the oldest. So having someone older than him to teach him brotherly-like things was a big deal to him.
Yeah.
And the two of them got jobs together through that rehab center as electrical linemen. That's a big-ass fucking job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, they don't just let people with mental disabilities do that.
No,
It's not a disability.
It's a big deal.
It's just a thing.
Otherwise, they would fry themselves a little
It's
bit.
not disabling.
Yeah. Aww.
So down the street from
really cool.
Ted lived Gary. And not long after the four previous men met at the Yuba City Vocational Rehabilitation Center, Gary started attending there too. Gary was there for his schizophrenia, which was set on by the use of illegal drugs while in the military. Before he attended the center, he had a really rough go of his illness. He was jailed on multiple occasions for violent behavior. At one point, he was even accused of attempting to rape a friend's girlfriend and attempting to molest a 12-year-old girl. But every time he was arrested, he was actually super happy to go to jail. Gary knew that he had issues and he wanted them to be solved, but he didn't know how to control his impulses. So it was like, okay, take me to jail so I don't do this again.
That kind of is like very like Ed Kemper-y to me.
Yeah. Ugh, don't say that.
Not to say, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm not comparing that like in that sense. I'm just meaning like the wherewithal to know that, you know, something is wrong and not knowing any other way to.
Yeah. When Gary drank to deal with his stress over the situation, it just got worse. But after he started attending the rehab center and got on medication, everything about him changed. He was considered by doctors to be a medical success. His schizophrenia was completely cured, quote unquote, with the use of medication. As long as he was on the medication, he didn't have a single episode. He was a different person and was loving his life.
That's awesome.
All 5 men became great friends after meeting and hanging out at the center, and they all started playing sports together. Basketball was their favorite. They even joined the Special Olympics team so they could play together for real that year.
Yes.
On February 24th, 1978, the 5 men went up to Chico State to watch a basketball game and get them in the best headspace for playing in their Special Olympic game on the very next day. And I'm sure it would have worked. Their favorite basketball team won the game that night, and they were there to see it happen. Unfortunately, something happened between the leaving after the winning game and when the Special Olympics bus left Yuba City the next afternoon, because the 5 men, so excited to play, never got on that bus, and they never even came back home. Twisted and Uncorked will be right back. If you prefer not to listen to ad breaks, head on over to patreon.com/twistedanduncorked for more information on receiving ad-free episodes. So the 5 men were seen leaving the game together in Jack's car. After they left, they were seen at Bear's Market, a little gas station convenience store type thing in Chico. The cashier remembers them buying a bunch of snacks and being rowdy about the fact that their favorite team had just won.
Boys.
Yes. Then they all 5 loaded back into Jack's car and left. This was the last credible sighting of the 5 men, but many more sightings would be claimed later on. Like I said before the break, the men never made it home that night. To their parents, this was a huge deal. The men could easily take care of themselves, but they had learned at the center that to take care of themselves, they couldn't do spontaneous things. Their lives were all very planned and routine. They all wanted to get better, and they all took their treatment plans very seriously. They were living great lives ever since they started listening to the advice of the center. Why would they mess it up?
Yeah.
Their parents reported them missing right away, but the police only knew that 5 men who were in their late 20s and early 30s went out on a Friday night and didn't come back home on a Saturday morning. Why is that weird? It wasn't until after the weekend, when the police were notified that the men didn't make it to the Special Olympics game, that they realized the severity of the case. This is when they seemed to overcompensate and mention to the press that this was a serious case because these men were mentally disabled. But as serious as the case was to them now, it wasn't a crime anymore. It was most definitely a tragic accident in their mind.
How many cases do you think would have been solved if they didn't have that rule of an adult going missing or, somebody being away on their own free will? And they just took family members' accounts and representation of who they were as normal. If I didn't come home all of a sudden, Kevin would know that was fucked up. You would know that was fucked up. But I'm 28 years old. They wouldn't take that seriously.
Right.
I can't wrap my brain around that level of thinking. If somebody's missing, they're missing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there's some Karen out there somewhere whose husband was cheating on her, and so she reported him missing, and the police found him at another girl's house. And, that's why, the police are like, we can't do this for every Karen.
They ruined a good thing for everyone. Yep.
What's the worst that's going to happen? There's going to be egg on your face?
Yep. We're going to make we're going to make an egg on your face shirt. I swear to God. Yeah. That's the 5th episode we've said that for. That'd be a cute little cartoon, though. They
do, push into high gear, start looking for them, but they're looking out. I'm about to get right into it, but they're looking for them in a place where they don't think they could have survived anyway, so they're not, looking for evidence. They're just looking for them.
Looking for bodies.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not a rush thing. It's they're already dead. This sucks, but we'll bring them home for you.
I hate that.
Because, this is why, the day after the game in Chico, Jack's car was found on a snowy, mountainous road by a National Forest ranger, who did let the officials know, but they didn't actually realize whose vehicle it was at the time, and that it was a big deal. So the police finally made it up to the car on February 28th. And again, this is because when the parents first reported it, it was just our boys who are 30 years old. After the weekend is when they found out that they were supposed to be at a Special Olympic game. They heard Special Olympic and was like, oh no, these poor mentally dumb boys, let's go find them. On that day, the police took the vehicle in for processing and found nothing indicating foul play. The vehicle was in pristine condition still, so it obviously was driven carefully and not hastily. There were snack wrappers from Bear's Market that were still in the car. There were many maps of the area in the car, and one of the windows was rolled down just a bit. They also found what some of them thought were human footprints going up the mountain from the car. But the majority of the police team decided it couldn't be because it wouldn't make any sense for anyone to go up the mountain. If the men abandoned their car on the side of the road here, it must have been because they got stuck in the snow. If you get stuck in the snow going up the mountain, then obviously you walk back down to where you came from, not up the mountain to an even colder and more isolated area. So they ignored the prints. They thought it must be a fluke, and they focused all their search efforts on going downhill from the vehicle. As this information was put into the news and spread throughout the area, more information was coming about that just made the situation even harder to understand. One man named Joseph Schoens happened to be on the same street that the car was found on the same night that they disappeared. He said that he went up there to check out the snow levels because he wanted to take his wife and daughter skiing that weekend. While up on that road, he said that his car got stuck in the snow, and he got out to push it. While attempting to push his car free, he had a mild heart attack and climbed into his car to rest in the warmth of the heat. At one point in the night, he heard a car pull up. He looked out and saw the 5 men. He called out for help, but then right away those men quieted and turned out their headlights, like they were hiding from Joseph. A few hours later, Joseph heard whistling and saw flashlights. Joseph called out for help again, and again everything went silent and the lights went out. Eventually, his vehicle ran out of gas, and so he had no more heat. So he headed by foot down the mountain to the lodge where he got warm. The friends he spoke with when he got back said that Joseph was acting strange and erratic. He complained that someone was following his vehicle so closely that he had bottomed out, and he said that his chest hurt. But this long story about seeing 5 men did not come about until Joseph had reported it after he saw it on the news. So the friend's story that night and his story of that night are different.
I hate it when people do that shit.
Yeah, police believed his story to be suspicious. For one thing, Joseph lived very close to the area and would have known what the snow levels were. For another, he drove his Volkswagen Beetle up there.
Yeah,
who
that's
would
not
take
getting
that
a
up a mountain?
Yeah.
Also, his Volkswagen was air-cooled, which, I don't know anything about cars, but allegedly means that the heat would not have worked if the car was not in motion. So how did he stay warm inside if it was idling?
Oh, shit.
And
we all learned
lastly,
something new today, guys.
right? And lastly, at one point, Joseph even said to them, so he said this to the police. He said, "I think you think I know more than I'm letting on, but I don't, and I really can't handle the stress." And the doctors agreed with him, and they told the police that if they kept questioning Joseph, he could have another heart attack and die. Did they really want that on their conscience?
Well, have another heart attack and die if you're gonna lie. I'm sorry.
Police wrote it off. It was like, Joseph's not a good person to talk to anyway. He was known to be an alcoholic and a pathological liar. He probably just made the whole thing up.
Good.
Later, when a woman in Brownsville claimed to have seen the men at her convenience store in a red pickup truck a few days after they went missing, Joseph added to his story seeing that red pickup truck on the same road that night, as well as a woman with a baby.
F you, Joseph.
Yeah. Still trying to find the boys and fit the pieces of the puzzle together, some of the parents and even the investigators sought out information from psychics.
Oh, God.
My favorite. One of them said that the boys were murdered by someone in Orville, and even gave a street number as an address. But the street number did not exist anywhere in town.
Who's shocked?
Another psychic said that the investigators were searching in the wrong area by looking south of the car, and they should be looking up north instead, up the mountain. She also said that something important would happen on March 15th. And when March 15th came, there was an interesting bit of information. Debbie Lynn Reese of Yuba City answered a phone call on the night of March 15th. The person on the other line said one sentence before hanging up. He said, "I know where the 5 missing men are." Debbie Lynn didn't even personally know the 5 men, but she knew of them because of the news. It was all over the news. So she called the police right away. They said it was probably nothing, but a little while later, he called back again, and he said, "I hurt them." She said, "You hurt who?" He said, "You know who," and he hung up. So Debbie Lynn calls the police again, and this time the police are like, "Okay, record every phone call conversation you have, like, for the next couple of hours, just in case he calls back."
For the rest of your life, please? Because what?
Right. Well, he didn't call back for a while, like a couple days, and so eventually she stopped recording. But of course, that's when he calls again. For the last time, just saying, "Those 5 guys are dead."
No!
Yeah. No one knows if Debbie Lynn was telling the truth, and if she was, no one knows who the caller was. Did he do something? Did he know something? Was it a prank? Nobody knows.
Oh, I hate it because people have done that kind of shit in the past and it could be a prank, but it also could be very real.
Yeah. And how did the psychic know something was going to happen on March 15th?
Right?
That's weird.
Okay, I have a love-hate relationship with psychics, and I'm sure you're very much the same way. Like, sometimes...
Yes, some of them are scammers.
They are absolute scammers, and then sometimes they have information like this where it's like...
Yeah, well, so there was 2 specific psychics, and the first one said something about a street number that didn't exist. The second one said that the investigator should be searching up the mountain instead of down, and that something would happen on March 15th. Something did happen on March 15th, and later we'll find out the investigators should have been searching up the mountain. So, I like that one.
I like that one too.
Another strange angle was the confession from a friend of Gary's family. This man had come to their home to confess what he had done. Apparently, this family friend held a grudge against Gary from his days of being unmedicated and out of control. He told Gary's family that he ran into the boys that night after the game, and he messed with them. He said he threw Gary into Oroville Lake, and he took the other 4 boys up to the mountain and forced them out of their car to walk in the cold. The police didn't believe this man too much because he was a drug addict, and 2 days after he confessed to the family, he died of a drug overdose. So that's a little scary.
Yeah, very scary.
Yet another angle was that of Gary's drug-using friend who lived in Oroville, nearby where the car was found. But when the families of the men went to try and find Gary's friend at his property, they were immediately startled to find that the road up to the house was booby-trapped, and there were men with large guns all around the property.
Oh,
I assume they were probably growing weed in the mountains of California.
Based on our Sasquatch research.
Exactly. The parents informed police, but the police said that they already spoke with that friend, and he hadn't spoken with Gary in over a year, so there was no lead there, no reason to bother them. There were also many other reported signs of the men, most of which were just people calling to say that they had seen a mentally disabled boy in their town or near their house. The police gave up searching the area after about a month because, again, even with the car being found, this wasn't a crime to them. It was just a tragic accident. An accident of some mentally disabled boys who had gotten lost and then got hurt. It wasn't until June 4th of that year when the first of the men were found. Ted Weir was found by a 16-year-old boy who was out riding motorcycles or dirt bikes with his dad and his friend. Ted was in a trailer that belonged to the Forestry Service that was put there in case of emergencies.
Okay.
It was 12 miles north of where the car was and was full of food and warmth and heaters. Unfortunately, even though at least one of the men, Ted, found his way to the trailer, the men were not able to survive by using it.
Oh.
Ted was deceased and in decomp when he was found.
No.
His feet were badly frostbitten. He had lost between 80 and 100 pounds before death, with the cause of death probably being starvation.
Yeah.
And his beard growth showed that he had lived for 8 to 13 weeks after disappearing.
Oh my
Meaning
God.
that if the police would have checked up the mountain instead of down in the first place, Ted, at the very least, would still be alive and could explain what happened.
To the rest of them, yeah.
In the trailer, the window was broken, and the bed that Ted was found sleeping forever on was right next to the window, allowing the freezing air to blow right onto him. None of the heaters that were in the shed behind the trailer were touched or turned on. Ted definitely was not alone in that trailer the whole time because he was tucked in tightly in the bed with multiple sheets. There was also a lot of food that was eaten and the scraps were all over the trailer. But the only tool in the trailer to open the food was an army-issued can opener that only Gary or Jack would have been able to use, according to police. I feel like anybody can probably try to use a can opener, even if it was a hard one, if they're hungry enough. But police said it was a tricky one, so I don't know.
If not, I'm going to rip it open with my teeth because
Right.
I'm savage, but whatever.
Also inside the trailer was Gary's shoes, though Ted's boots were missing. Ted's gold ring, necklace, and a random gold watch was there, though, so it was not a suspected robbery. Gary's family, who went to look around the trailer, said that there were definitely paper notes all around the trailer that had Gary's handwriting on them. These items were sent with some of the other items as evidence, but when later looked into, the pieces of scrap paper were never mentioned in the report and never seen or spoke of by the police again. So, like, what the fuck are they trying to cover up?
Yeah. The fact that they didn't do their jobs and maybe something could have been found or done about all of this.
It's specifically Gary's papers.
Yeah.
Like, there were a bunch of items in the trailer that were sent into evidence. Only Gary's handwritten notes were never seen again. Like, they disappeared. Jackie's dad also said that on a chalkboard in the trailer, he saw Jackie's handwriting. But the police told him that it was probably just a ranger's writing from a long time ago. As the days went on, Bill, Jack, and Jackie were also found outside in the snow, between the trailer and the car. It is unknown whether they were making their way up the mountain towards the trailer when they died, or if they had already been to the trailer and left to go out and find help. Their causes of death are most likely succumbing to the elements, but being outside, their bodies were all scavenged by animals. Gary was never found.
No! What?
The main theory believed by the family of the men is that best friends Bill and Jack stuck together on their way up the mountain from the car. They succumbed to the elements in the snow before making it to the trailer. The other three, Ted, Jackie, and Gary, made it all the way up to the trailer, but with frostbite all about them. Jackie was probably taking care of Ted because they're best friends. Gary probably left after getting a little warm to go and find help or find the others or to get the car. Jack had the keys on him when he died, so the only way they could have the car is with Jack. Gary's shoes were in the trailer and Ted's were missing. Ted had bigger feet than Gary and his shoes were warmer, so Gary probably left his cold and wet shoes in the trailer and put his swollen, possibly frostbitten feet into Ted's shoes when he left. But something must have happened to Gary because he never returned. From there, Ted probably told Jackie, his little brother figure who still had shoes, "You should save yourself, go find warmth and come back for me later." But then Jackie died too, and could never alert anyone about Ted, who being so frostbitten and weak, couldn't take care of himself and eventually starved to death. But The biggest question that remains is, why were they on that road in the first place? Why did they get out of the car? Why did they go up the mountain? To this day, this case remains unsolved and is often even referred to as America's Day at Love Pass incident, which is like one of my favorite conspiracy unsolved things.
I know we've already discussed it. I will let you cover that one, but
I love it.
because it's definitely my favorite as well. I don't even know what to think about this.
Yeah. So, the listener who requested this is Clinton, and he sent me, we were talking a little bit about his idea of what happened here. It was very interesting. So, the big theory that he is in on, is that once they were up in the trailer, Gary, which is the one who had schizophrenia, started withholding food and survival gear. So, like, either, he wasn't on his medication anymore, he was not in his right mind anymore. That's why they never used the heaters, and that's why they didn't eat anymore, because Gary wouldn't let them.
Okay.
And then the others, when they realized, like, oh my gosh, maybe Gary's not in his right mind, we got to get out of here, they started leaving one by one, trying to escape, but then, succumbing. Like a fucking real life scary movie. You leave the trailer and run and die, and the people back at the trailer are like, did he make it? Did he get away? Should I try? And then they run and die. Ugh, scary.
It is a real life scary movie.
Yes. But then he said that after he listened to our story on the twins, he was like, well, I wonder if these 5 men had folie à deux, all of them.
Oh, interesting.
So they all just had some sort of weird shared madness
because they're all so close, and
The crazy thing about that to me is, I told you in that episode that I don't really believe in folie à deux. Yeah. I think that it is some sort of mind control thing, and I think if the police are being fucking sketchy, maybe it was some sort of mind control thing. They were in it was a rehab center. It wasn't like a scary mental institution like we talk about, but, people back then were experimented on a lot.
Mm-hmm. And in the 70s, when they're considered quote unquote retarded.
Yeah.
Possible. Very possible.
That scares me. What's your theory?
That scares me too.
Sorry, I also have a picture to show you.
Oh, yes.
Are you allowing me to share screen? Share.
My thought process has always been, though, like, if they were stuck and they thought that going up would make it easier for them to be seen and to receive help, like, that's why they went up the mountain. Like, that's always been.
But why would they think up would find help?
Because you're at an elevated place that you're able to, see where the nearest place is, or to, you know what I mean? Okay. Like a survival thing, like, not that they had flares or anything like that, but that they could see what their next move could be.
But why were they on that road in the first place?
I don't know. That I don't know.
Okay, so you can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
So down here is Yuba City. This is where they came from. These are the only 2 streets they could have taken, highways, these 2 arrows, to get to Chico, which is where the game was. Mm-hmm. They went to Chico by one of these routes. While in Chico, they watched the game. People saw them at the game. People saw them leave the game. People saw them get food at, the gas station or whatever. Then they left back towards home. If they would have went on 99, they would have just went home. If they would have went on 70, they could have made it into Oroville. Oroville is where the first psychic said they were murdered. Oroville is also where Gary's drug dealer friend lived, who may have had a weed farm. Oroville is also where Gary's family's friend lived, who admitted to murdering them. There's a road right here, this red line. This is the road that they were found on. They were found right here. It goes right through Oroville and then up this mountainous street. This is their car, and then the X's are the 4 bodies. So this is Oroville Lake.
I've heard this case so many times, but I've never actually seen it on a map.
Yeah.
Like visualized.
And
this
then
way. So I'm
Brownsville,
kind of
this is
very
where
upset and shocked.
this is where the girl who was like, "Oh, I saw them at my convenience store with in a red pickup truck." This is where that was.
Well, that girl's a fucking liar. So
Yeah.
she can
Probably.
No offense, but that both of the stories are lies.
Yeah. Well, see, my thing is the one guy, Joseph Schoens. What if he's not lying? I mean, he's definitely lying, but what if it's less lying and more he did something and so he's trying to cover it up by saying something else?
Maybe.
That scares
That's a
me.
possibility. That scares the shit out of me.
Like,
it
he
also is
hurt
like
them.
really it's hard to believe, but it's not impossible considering everything we've seen in true crime, but that somebody could overpower four fully grown men.
Right. Well, the scariest thing is, as much as they were men and they were perfectly capable of taking care of themselves, their parents did all say they were naive. They were trusting.
Yeah.
They were, you could easily talk them into doing something they probably shouldn't be doing.
I kind of like that theory on kind of the Sasquatch theory. Like maybe something happened in that realm.
Yeah.
Weed farm wise. And
yeah.
I mean, we've seen dark shit happen there with that, so...
Right. My confusion with that is, why would the police be helping cover it up? Like, and I'm not saying the police are helping cover up this whole case, but specifically, the parents were like, yes, we went and talked to we tried to go and talk to Gary's friend. There were guns all over the place, so we told the police, and the police said, no, leave them alone. Like, why would they say no, leave them alone if it was a weed farm? It's a war on drugs. They want to bust them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not trying to say that you're wrong. I'm just saying that every single theory has holes. It's weird.
Every theory has holes. I know. I have no idea. Why would they have gone that way? Like, something would have had to pull them that way.
Yeah. Or
something would have had to persuade them or
the one that is most believable to me is the one with Gary's family friend, because he lived in Oroville. And I know we said that the psychic is wrong. No, the family friend that overdosed.
Oh, yeah.
I know we said that psychic was wrong, but she did say that they were murdered in Oroville. Oroville Lake is in Oroville, and this drug overdose guy said that he threw Gary into Oroville Lake. There was a phone call on March 15th that said, I hurt those boys. I know what happened to those boys. Yeah, they're all dead. And then this guy overdosed, which, he's a drug addict. Maybe he just overdosed accidentally, or maybe he completed suicide. Yeah. And then believable. He also said, not only did he say, I put Gary in the lake, he said, I drove those boys up the mountain and made them get out and walk. That would explain why they were up there and why they were walking.
And why those footsteps were going... Oh.
Yeah. What it doesn't explain is how they didn't survive in the trailer. They had everything in there.
Yeah.
There was heaters, there was food.
Unless somebody made sure of it?
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of. Because you're right. They're self-sufficient enough to survive.
And the stuff in the trailer, it's literally meant for emergencies. They said that the 5 of them could have lasted at least a year on the supplies in there. And they didn't last 13 weeks.
Oh, no.
So.
That has to be it. Like, ugh.
I don't know.
Because Gary was the only one that was never found.
Right.
So.
Well, a lot of people believe that Gary did it. He was a bad guy at one point.
Who thinks that?
Maybe he wasn't taking his medication. Maybe he got drunk on his medication. He was schizophrenic. Maybe he had an episode.
I don't think that he could have done that. I know many people that deal with schizophrenia, and I can't see them doing that to their closest friends. Like,
there are allegedly...
It's not unheard of, but...
multiple sightings of him after they were found.
Oh.
But most of them are by his family, and
And there's always that you see what you want to believe,
yes,
see what you want to see kind of theory.
And they were very heavily involved in, like, psychics and stuff. They might have just been seeing his ghost. I hate to say it, but...
Yeah. See, I know so many people that have suffered from schizophrenia. I can't believe that such a sweet man that is so close to these... And 4 men? Like, if he tried to turn on 4 people, wouldn't they be like, no? Like, 4 grown men would be able to overpower Gary if they needed to.
Yeah.
I would think.
The other thing is, and this could be either with Gary being the suspect or with the drug overdose guy being the suspect, is the only people who had a driver's license was Gary and Jack. It was Jack's car. Jack was driving. He never let anybody drive his car. But also, his parents said that his car was his baby, and they said that for it to have been found with the window down, he would never leave the window down when it was snowing. He would have never even rolled it down when it was snowing, because snow could have gotten in the car and ruined the inside of the seats if it got wet. So whoever was driving the car, they do not believe was Jack. So it had to have been either Gary or this drug overdose guy who drove them up there, made them get out and walk.
That's the only one that makes sense to me.
How did Jack have the keys if someone else was driving the car?
Planted on him?
Yeah, maybe. Ugh, it's all a mess.
I know!
None of it makes sense. I don't know.
What do you think? What's, like, your favorite theory? Because that's my favorite theory.
Yeah, my favorite theory is either the drug overdose guy or the, now that Clinton brought it up, the folie à deux. But again, my version of it being they were experimented on and maybe trying to do some weird mind control shit with Gary and made Gary do those things to them.
Maybe.
So, I don't know.
This case never makes sense. Why were they there? Like, they literally went and, like, a totally different way.
Totally
so something
different way.
would have had to have stopped them from their ride home to go that different way.
Yeah, to get off in Orville.
Yeah.
Well,
I have nothing better to offer. I'm just as perplexed as all of you.
Yeah, the podcast that I started listening to for most of the interview information is called Yuba County Five. It is a podcast by Mopac Audio, hosted by Shannon McGarvey. When I listened to it, there were only 5 or 6 episodes, but it is still occurring. So she's still updating weekly, I believe. It might be bi-weekly.
And is that where you had the family interviews?
Yes. So now she's talking about, the last thing that I heard her talk about was the sightings of Gary after he had died, or after they,
quote unquote,
think he might have died, by his family. His niece specifically saw him, like, in a bar. She said he was there 1 second and then he just, like, disappeared. She's like, he had to have run out. I'm like, or you saw ghosts, sweetie. Like, I'm sorry.
I hate that too, because, like...
Yeah.
Because we are very much believers in paranormal activity, and... Oh, poor girl.
Yeah. So,
I don't know.
If you all want to check that out to get more updates, hopefully she'll have them. But let us know what your theories are. Yeah. Let's end this with something happy.
Yes. What
happened on this day?
Today?
It is April 12th. I almost just said a year again. So 2 things. Number 1 is that on this day in 1945, the U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt died.
Shit.
However, Franklin D. Roosevelt was known to have, well, what we thought at the time was polio. And because he had polio, or thought he had polio, we actually don't think he had polio. It's a big, huge conspiracy. That's a case for another day. But he was a huge advocate for polio. And on this day, hang on, I need to do math. 10 years later, on April 12th, 1955, the first polio vaccine was announced to be safe and effective. It was given full approval by the U.S. FDA.
Shit.
Yeah.
Woo.
So that's pretty cool.
That's more than can be said about the fucking COVID vaccine, so. That's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah.
You did a really good job, though, S. I can't
Thank
say
you.
that I have any new theories. This case has always been perplexing. Like, I honest to God don't know what to think about it sometimes.
Yeah.
It's just really sad, and I always wonder if police had handled it differently. Like I said at the beginning, if they had taken missing persons seriously as an adult, like what differences,
Yeah.
what cases could be solved.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And if they looked at it as a crime instead of as an accident, then maybe they would have looked at evidence more closely.
Yeah.
If they would have went up the hill instead of down the hill.
Ted.
Yeah. So many things.
Yeah. I don't think that sense needs to be put into investigations. I think just evidence needs to be. If that could be the takeaway.
Yeah, you're supposed to treat everything as if it's the worst thing and then narrow it down, you know?
Or if it's like the newest thing you've ever seen. Yeah. Let's do police work like that again, guys, because
Please.
this one's always perplexed me.
Yeah.
But you did a really good job. Thank you so much, Clinton, for recommending this.
Yes,
keep
thank
them
you.
coming, because Clinton's recommended a few, and he's been a patron of ours for a long time. So we truly adore him and appreciate his input. So
We almost have same brain as Clinton.
yeah,
so we love his suggestions. We'll probably love all of y'all's if you would just send them in.
Send them in. Let us know what you guys want to hear. We will be here again next Tuesday for your regularly scheduled programming. And in the meantime, keep it
twisted.
Thank you for listening to Twisted and Uncorked podcast. Remember to leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you are listening now. It really is the best way to spread the word. You can also check out all of our sources and materials, as well as photos for the episode, on our website at twistedanduncorked.com. And you can follow us on social media at Twisted and Uncorked or Twisted_pod on Twitter. Thank you so much for all of your love and support, and we will see you next Tuesday for a brand new episode. Cheers!